Well, hey there, everybody, and welcome to the Last of Us Episode 3 Spoilers Review. We've got the gang all here. We've got John and Rob and Chris and Ray and Taylor and me. And we're all going to talk about this, but we're also going to, aside from our thoughts, we'll be opening them up the show to your thoughts as well in the Super Chats. But how's everyone doing?
We're good. Welcome back, everybody. Like earlier today on the John Campea Show, we talked in a hopefully fairly non-spoiler way about the newest episode of Last of Us. And of course, today is this afternoon is us talking full open spoiler. So like if this is not giving it away, if the title of this video doesn't give it away, this is a full open post-game spoiler discussion thing. If you have not seen the new episode of Last of Us, be warned, we will be talking in all open details. And if you got a question or a comment or a thought or observation, you are allowed to write it in full spoilery detail. Yeah, let's, oh, by the way, we're trying out a different kind of camera to do this more casual sit-around discussion.
And he's so
it's great,
cute.
I can see all of you.
I know.
Yeah, we're all actually facing each other.
Everybody's got eye contact.
Oh, that's a camera?
It's great.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a camera.
Yes.
Ray, oh, that's a camera? Yes, that's our camera right there.
He's this cute little owl speaker guy. I love him.
It's the owl, yeah. So, okay, I already said what I thought about the show. It's not just a great episode of The Last of Us. This was, I think, one of the best single episodes of television. It was practically a movie. You pointed out earlier today, Rob, that it's like, it qualifies as a feature-length film.
Does.
Yeah.
At the runtime it qualifies as a feature-length film. And it basically kind of was the beauty of this. And you know, one of the things I walked away with, I mentioned it on the show today, was that to me, this episode ends the debate about, does a video adaptation need to be as 100% true to the video game itself in order to be good? Last night's episode was a lot of liberties being taken.
Oh, yes.
While sticking to core concepts from the game, right? Like you were saying before we started the show that the video game itself implies that Bill and Frank
Are together.
were a gay couple.
Yeah. They try to kind of skirt around it when talking to Joel and Ellie.
Right. In the game, all we see is Frank's hanging body, but in this, they flesh that out. They go to a whole different thing. They do an entirely different thing, and it was one of the best episodes I have ever seen. So why don't we start talking here about what we thought the best parts of the show were? What moments of the episode really stood out to you? Because we all established this morning we love the episode. So Chris, like when you think back to watching this last night or this morning, whenever you watched it.
No, last night. I stayed up till 10:30, man.
Yeah, because they don't drop at midnight like they do. What stood out to
Wild
you?
woman. Oh my gosh. I love the kind of bombastic fight they start to have of just the immediate like, fuck you.
Oh, and the first 3 years later?
Yeah, the 3 years
Oh,
later.
that was so good.
I love it. And especially because of Frank doing the like, this is where we live and paying attention to things matters. Beauty matters. Taking care of things matters.
Well, his line was, taking care of things is how we show love.
Yes.
I love that
Which
line.
sets you up for everything that happens here then, because you see them taking care of each other. Particularly you see how Bill just becomes this caregiver in the end.
Yeah.
And you pointed out, I think, too, the purpose line, like that we all build to, of just this change was so important because of the narrative structure of this show now, because you have to have Joel understand that caring for something matters. We already saw Tess allude to this of, I know you didn't feel the same way as I did about you before she went. Joel decided to cut himself off from everything after Sarah
Let's
died.
slide this cable under your arm.
Thank you. Before I just fling my mic at you. You don't want that to happen? But so, you know, he's really shut himself off from things. And you see how you still can have love and care and tenderness in this very horrible, horrible world. And how if you don't have that, are you even really living? It was beautiful. And I think changing it so that it wasn't Frank hanging himself from being bit and hating Bill. I think changing it to the two of them, you know, still taking his own life, but really caring about his partner and living a life that was really worthwhile was so important to this show.
I loved all those moments. I think one of the ones for me that I didn't mention this morning, and it reminded me a little bit of the Parks and Rec episode where they go to, I can't remember the name of the nightclub, but they're
Snake Hole.
The Snake Hole, and they have snake juice.
Yes.
And Ron gets totally giddy and whatever.
He wears the tiny hat.
And then wears the tiny hat and he's dancing. So there's a moment in it where Frank tells him, I traded one of your guns. He's like, which gun? One of the small ones. But they get down and he takes a bite of the strawberry. Nick Offerman's reaction, I keep wanting to call him Ron Swanson. Nick Offerman's reaction when he takes a bite of that strawberry, it was everything. I mean, it was so good.
That's one of my favorite. I was going to bring that up. That's one of my favorite moments of the episode because, what I thought was really interesting is how the character has created suburbia or retained suburbia. He's built literally a fence around.
He's made a microcosm,
this
basically.
bucolic neighborhood. And then when Frank's like, I want to go fix up the wine store, or I want to go fix up that was what he wanted to do was reestablish civilization, basically. Whereas Nick Offerman, his character was never part of civilization. He was even though he lived in a house, he really lived under his house, in that bunker. And I'll tell you, one of the greatest moments I thought of last night's episode was when Ellie and Joel go up to the body pit. And he says, well, there wasn't enough room in the QZs, and they just shot people.
Dead people can't be infected.
And you saw the kid's clothing. The blanket, and it cuts to the baby, and you see these hopeful humans being taken out by the military.
That was a gut punch.
It was just, I was watching this going, oh my God. And they're doing all these things because all of this imagery, we've seen it in other places. I mean, a lot of zombie apocalypse stories, they have wartime imagery in them. They have concentration camp imagery with them. There's so many different real human historical events that are encapsulated in all of this. But I really enjoyed, do I say I enjoyed? I did. I enjoyed great entertainment. So watching this episode, I was moved in so many different ways as they moved through, because they gave us all these different scenarios that reminded me of other things, other movies, other stories that I had read. But it was an encapsulation of all of these things, like all of the zombie or all of the post-apocalyptic stories I'd ever been told. They touched on in the two of their relationships as the years ticked by. And I'm like, this was really, really clever. Because you saw the fall and potential preservation of civilization, which is something that's really hard to do with one scenario, but they did them all.
Yeah.
And like you go from the action scene where Frank goes out and there's Nick
when
Offerman.
The Raiders are attacking.
Oh my God, was that an incredible scene? I mean, horribly violent, but you realize that all the prep work that was done, it paid off. And I thought that was really, really interesting because you have to fight in order to preserve. In a way, they were like colonists. The British were coming.
But to that point, I mean, I think that, I alluded to it a little bit on the show today, but I couldn't go into details because I don't want to spoil anything. But, there are some people who would write, well, it didn't really further the story. I'm like, if you don't think this episode furthered the story, you're not quite getting the story. Because what this episode did for me, besides starting to build the bond between Joel and Ellie, and giving us context about how Joel suddenly comes into this, giving us recourse back to what the radio messages were and all that kind of stuff. It showed us as the viewer that the world they live in is not just an unspeakable shithole. There's something they're fighting for. Mm-hmm. There's something they're trying to get back. And I thought that was key. So, Ray, I haven't had a chance to ask you, like, what was what out of the episode yesterday was some of your favorite moments?
Okay, there's actually a couple things. That's probably all I'm going to say about the episode. Their story, Bill and Frank.
Yeah.
The scenes they chose in the time they had were perfect because you could feel like the all the time that they, you could just like the scenes that they picked drew the picture for me, like their whole picture.
At which
like,
point in time they decided to fast forward.
Yeah. Like even like the things that they picked, you just felt for that couple. The three things that stood out to me was, first of all, that underground bunker that he had. I love anyone who has like a secret bunker, especially if it's filled with guns like that. Like he's well protected. He has everything scoped out. Number two, like the last episode, I was saying how I was so scared because I didn't feel confident in Joel. I don't know why, but there was a scene in this episode where he's just sitting at the table talking to
Bill,
who had the gun.
Get that gun
pointed
out
at
of my face.
Just how he was talking to him, like he didn't care. Like now, I'm ready for the next episode. Like I feel now Joel can protect me actually because I get scared. So like because the last episode I was like, man, he can't protect me like from these clickers, whatever. But now I'll go to war with Joel now. Like he's a dude now.
You know what I also thought was really interesting? The first scene where they sit down to food, and Frank sits down and says, "Oh, you know to pair Beaujolais with rabbit."
There's a guy I follow on Twitter who is he's a gay YouTuber and whatever, but he put up a screenshot of that. The way, and you see the way Nick Offerman was holding the bottle. He goes, he wrote, "The moment I knew he was gay." He wrote that on his terms right there.
Well, the funny thing about that is I felt that Nick Offerman like never left this house. He never had human interaction, and
his world was very small.
He learned all this stuff in the bunker. He knew Linda Ronstadt, but he didn't. That when they tried to play it, now you had a man come in from the outside that was an artist, that was a painter, that had lived this life where he couldn't lie, and he probably had a lot of friends, and went to museums, and had this life. And Nick Offerman probably didn't know that at all, was stuck in and only knew what his mother knew. Like, don't touch that, it's my mom's. And when they came together at that table, it was two men of culture, one from the outside and one kind of who had been insular his whole life. And for the very first time, you had one man that probably was never comfortable in the outside world, and then another man who also was not comfortable with the outside world, from two different places, and they had sort of a meeting of the minds. And I really over a pairing of wine and food. And I thought that was so interesting that you had, I mean, a man comes kind of up from the underworld and one man comes from outside, and they sat down and they found one another. And I thought that was a really interesting way to play that.
How good that food looked, by the way.
Oh, it's amazing.
And then you notice that it was
Food
this,
looked great.
that first meal they had was also the last meal he prepared.
Yeah.
And you know what? When I realized that Bill was going to kill himself as well, the moment I realized it was, as Frank's telling him his plan, Bill's breaking down and crying. But the next scene when you see him wheeling him to the boutique to pick out clothes, Bill looks all of a sudden very content. And it's like, you're watching that, it's like, he didn't just get on board with Frank's plan. He's like, he's planning to kill himself too.
Yeah, I panicked and I thought it was going to happen, but I thought it wasn't going to take because of how he interacts with Joel and Ellie in the game. I thought they were going to keep him alive. And
I thought there was a chance
upset.
he was going to take it and then like 2 days later wake up really sick and be really angry that he didn't die and Joel would come across him or something. But
There's still a chance for that happening.
Oh no!
you know what? I'm not going to lie. When they showed that last shot with the window, which is one of the most beautifully conceived, pure visual shots I've ever seen in a television show, I half expected to see a silhouette come between the camera and the window, whether it was or he's hiding out in his bedroom now. I just didn't know, but clearly they didn't.
Think too, just from like a larger like film and TV perspective too, a lot of times when we see gay couples, they die very violently and tragically. And I think it was really beautiful that yes, they did take their own lives, but I love that they had agency and that they had love and they had autonomy in that decision. And I think that was really, really important too. That neither one of them was like fridged or it was just like a horrific, hateful death. It was surrounded by love.
And they had built civilization back.
Yeah.
I mean, it always kind of made me sad. You had the Raiders come in, but here were these guys that had built this, even though there's a community of two, it was this vibrant community where they were growing new food and they were enjoying their lives and they had wine and they had culture and they could paint.
Their produce looked great. I can't garden to save my life. I'm such a disappointment to my farmer husband.
I love the way Bill was out there, just like standing with no cover, or I don't know anything about the story, so all of this is new to me. So.
It's funny because that's another change from the game. Because in the game, Ellie knows how to drive a car, so that was another little change in the show. That I mean, I've never been. I loved her one line too. Like he was saying, crammed in between two people, baby crying, $12 sandwich, and she's like, "Dude, you were in the sky."
Well, it's funny because none of that was available. You know, she grew up in the post-apocalyptic world where none of this stuff that we take for granted now. And I love that we see the world the way we see her wonder. We can recognize that because we're on the other side of her. And like when she first got in the truck and she was looking, she was looking at the seat belt because she didn't know what a seatbelt
Well, he says put in a seatbelt, and she's like,
yeah, and the way she's kind of looking at it, like,
Yeah.
why would I possibly put this on? What is this? She has no clue or concept, and it was really well done.
It was a really great world building moment.
all right. So, listen, we got a lot more to talk about, but let's get to it. Let's focus on you guys and what you guys want to talk about, the points you want to bring up, questions you have, observations, theories that you have. So let's jump over to the live chats that you guys have been sending in. So, Jonathan, what we got?
First, we got a little bit of a break from our sponsors, and then we'll get to the super chats. So we're going to hear from our friends at Fume and our friends at MasterClass.
Guys, we want to take a second to thank a sponsor of this video, Fume. Be smart. Don't start. Kick the habit. Put it out before it puts you out. All phrases we've heard 100 times, and yet we still continue to have bad habits. Today's sponsor, Fume, is on a mission to accelerate humanity's breakup from the bad habits that consume far too many of us. Fume is a natural diffusive device that uses plants and behavioral science to help you trade out your negative habit for a positive one. You see, Fume is not a vape. It's a non-electronic device designed to transform your negative habits. Because instead of pods filled with potentially harmful chemicals like a vape, Fume uses cores infused with plants like peppermint and cinnamon for delicious natural flavors. And Fume's new version 2 model is snappy and tactile. With an adjustable airflow dial and a magnetic end cap, your fingers will always have something to do. The device itself is really attractive, and once I popped in the core and took my first inhale of it, it tasted fantastic. Guys, the easiest way to stop a bad habit is to switch to a positive one, and Fume is designed to perfectly do just that. So head over to tryfume.com and use the promo code CAMPEA to save 10% off when you get the Journey Pack today. The Journey Pack comes with 3 unique flavors and the new version 2 Fume to help kickstart your positive habits. That's tryfume, tryfum.com, and use the code CAMPEA to save an additional 10% off your order today. We want to thank a sponsor of this video, MasterClass. MasterClass offers classes on a wide variety of topics, all taught by world-class instructors at the very top of their fields. Each class is broken out into individual video lessons, usually around 10 minutes long. And MasterClass is completely accessible on your phone, the web, smart TV, and available via audio mode to listen to classes on the go. They have over 2,500 video lessons from over 180 of today's most brilliant minds. They're all available anytime, anywhere on iOS, Android, desktop, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, and Roku. Now, obviously around here on the John Campea Show, we love our movies, so why not learn filmmaking from Jodie Foster, or maybe directing from Ron Howard himself, or the great Neil Gaiman doing his masterclass on the art of storytelling. And you guys have heard me talk about my favorite masterclass, Business Strategy and Leadership by Big Papa Iger himself, Bob Iger, the new and returning CEO of Disney. So guys, I highly recommend that you check it out. Get unlimited access to every class, and as a John Campea Show listener, you get 15% off an annual membership. Just go to masterclass.com/Campea now. That's masterclass.com/Campea for 15% off Masterclass.
Well, all right, guys. So first up, we've got Raymond Reddington, who writes, Episode 3 to me was a filler episode, but still the best episode of the season. Phenomenal episode. Loved the Joel and Ellie scenes and the Bill and Frank relationship. Heartbreaking what happened.
I just don't agree with the concept of a filler episode. When an episode is actively building the world and laying foundation of what we're, to even understand things that are going to happen later, it's not a filler. Like for Supernatural, where they have the big long storyline. I don't know, let's take the Yellow-Eyed Demon storyline. And then they take an episode that's totally divorced from what the story is. And it just stands on its own completely. It doesn't actually add anything to the show. That's a filler episode. To me, this was an episode that was vital for a couple of reasons. The starting of the development of the bond between Joel and Ellie. The Frank and Bill thing about getting a better understanding of the world we're in and understanding what they're all fighting for. 3, understanding how Joel, they need to come up with a story angle here. Joel gets the car, they get the supplies. And by the way, I think we're going to come back to Lincoln, even though they don't in the game. I think they're going to come back to Lincoln. Maybe so. Again, for that reason, I don't find it to be, by any definition, I just don't think it's a filler episode.
It's certainly not your typical cheesecake of just like, let's do a zany recap.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
It
exactly.
had purpose.
But I think what's really interesting, listening to the commentary about this, everybody just wants to see the game. They're waiting for all these touchstones.
The game players want to see the game.
Well, yeah, and when you get to a story like this,
Did a little bit. Build a battery.
Well, yes, you did, and you're in with this episode, the game players don't know what's happening. You know, we're off the track. We're off the beaten track. What's going on here? So, you know, when they say filler episode, I'm not getting to the things that I know that are already familiar, which I think is kind of a strange way to approach narrative, because this isn't just the game. We've seen the flashback sequences, first the talk show in the 60s, then the great scene in Jakarta, and that great flashback scene, 2 flashback scenes where you see what happens to the families, you know, out in the wild.
Oh, yeah.
And then you saw, we met Bill, and we saw his life when those families are being round up. So you got 2 different things happening at the same time, because you realize if this was happening in this town, in Lincoln, it was happening everywhere.
Yeah.
And so that's what they're filling this stuff in. So to me, like you say, it's all relevant because it's all world building and you understand what else has happened. So when we meet other characters, we have context of where these people might have come from and what they had to put up with.
Exactly. It's very important for us too to understand that Fedra is not good.
Yeah.
Like, they're not nice people. They were murdering babies.
They are Nazis.
And because dead people can't get sick, right? And it's also important for us to get that first glimpse at Raiders, because that's going to be a very important thing that's going to come back through as well, where we're going to see some other familiar people show up.
Yes.
So gamers, be excited.
All right.
Things will happen.
What's next?
Yeah. And now Bert with a fun fact. Eagles started as Linda Ronstadt's backup band.
I didn't know
I
that.
didn't know that either.
I was a little before my time, but that's amazing.
That's very cool.
All right. What's
All right.
next?
CJ Rebirth has a couple quotes here. They have hot water and don't you look pretty?
Oh, the don't you
love
look
that.
pretty
Don't you
line.
look pretty.
But that goes where we're talking about, right? Like, we're starting to see the connection, chemistry, and bond between Joel and Ellie. Something that obviously we did not do in the first couple of episodes. Ellie was simply a package. Now we're starting to see the beginnings of them building that bond. And again, one of my favorite moments of the episode, I alluded to it on the show earlier. Right at the beginning of the episode, she's sitting by the tree. She goes, "Look, about Tess." He said, "I don't want to hear your stories." "Oh, I'm not saying I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You're grown-ass people. You made a choice. That had nothing to do with me. I didn't make the choice, so don't blame me for what happened." Obviously, she feels terrible, but hey, listen, don't blame me. And I love, without a single line of dialogue, camera goes to Pedro Pascal's face, and you can kind of see he completely respected what she just said.
Yeah.
It's like, you're right. You know, sort of thing. And I feel like that was the striking of the match that starts their relationship. I feel like that moment was the start
Like,
of their
he doesn't
relationship.
look at her as a liability, like, as much as like that. Like,
Yeah, it
this
wasn't
girl's
her fault.
tough.
You know,
Yeah.
it wasn't her fault.
I also love when Ellie went in the basement. And
Foraging for tampons.
And-
Although I'm curious why she felt like she couldn't let Joel know she was going down there.
because I think she also has a sense that she has to have her strike out on her own. She has to explore the world that she's been thrust into. But when she went down there and how she contemplated that infected, you know,
Yep.
and cut again, she's like, I've never been this close. Like, not when I'm being chased or what she just got out of. And I love that.
And then kind of, it showed a little heartlessness too.
Yeah, no, that was
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
That was probably the
I mean,
best part of the episode.
You can't forget. I mean, one of the things that's different is in the game, Ellie has a sort of softer side to her, and maybe I'm projecting because this is our little Mormont that she'll kill. She's willing to fight. So I like seeing her have this edge to her, because if she didn't, you won't believe that she could survive in this environment. And she's teaching herself. She's sort of getting her wings out here. Like, he could die and I could be stuck here. And then what am I going to do?
By the way, we should pick up the pace here because I know we got a lot of questions to get through. But I should mention this one thing. So after I watch the episodes, I do what I always do before I go to bed. I pop on YouTube, see what's in my recommended list, whatever. I came across a couple of videos from like 6 to 8 months ago, and I think one from a year ago, and it was shortly after they announced the casting of the show. And it was by angry people who was like, this show's doomed. like Pedro Pascal's great and everything, but he's not Joel. And the little Mormon goes, she looks nothing like her. And it was like how this video about how they've already totally screwed up Last of Us. It's going to be a total dumpster fire. I'm like, watch this going. Now, unfortunately on my TV, I can't look at the comments. I would love to look at the most up-to-date comments.
Aged like milk.
This aged badly. Yeah, I'd love to see that. All right, sorry. All right, what's next?
All right, Daniel Vacura writes, Con O'Neill was supposed to play Bill, as revealed on the podcast. He couldn't do it since he was doing Our Flag Means Death. Nick Offerman is Craig Mazin's friend as the second choice, who was perfect.
He was the one hesitancy about it to me is the character is very much like Ron Swanson's cousin. Like a little different, but at its core, kind of Ron Swanson's cousin.
Yeah.
But other than that, and the way they aged. First of all, seeing the dinner scene, where we again see Pedro Pascal the way he really is, like not aged up. Mm-hmm. And then cutting back to Joel. Now today, it's like you realize, oh my God, they aged him so great. But the way Nick Offerman aged through it to the point where he looks like a gentle little Santa Claus at the end.
I love him.
Oh,
and the way
so
Frank
cuddly.
aged, you could see the disease eating him alive.
Yeah.
They really did a great.
Especially since they just made him so like spry and full of life and everything.
Yeah, it was heartbreaking.
Yeah.
All right, what's next?
All right, I am Jack's 12-cent support.
Thank you.
And then David D writes, tragic theory in a country of 330 million, near impossible. Ellie is the first human immune person. Others simply ended things instead of waiting it out and turning.
I mean, that's a depressing theory, but maybe not a bad one. Like, maybe there were others who got bit and just assumed, well, they're dead. And
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Because that's what everyone keeps trying to do to her.
yeah, it's like, well, that's what Joel and Tess nearly did to her,
Yeah.
right? So that's a good theory. I like it. All right, what's next?
J Jab Dab writes, what's a quote? The government or Nazis had me dying.
Oh, not the government. The government are all Nazis. Well, they didn't always. Like that. Can I just
Now
say
they are.
that whole thing? Their relationship is so freaking good. Like when he goes, like, "We're gonna have friends over." We don't have friends. Well, we're gonna have friends. I met a really nice girl on the radio, and like that whole thing was pure gold, absolute gold. I loved it. All right, what's
Even
next?
Frank's relationship with Tess.
Yes,
You know,
yeah,
they
it was,
had developed
yes.
this friendship. And it was, again, the economy of storytelling. It tells you so much in a short period
Yeah,
of time.
loved it.
Really well done.
All right, we've got Justice Sub 32 who writes, I love that we're able to see the relationship that Bill and Frank had in this episode. It gives us more context on what happened to people. They are like that was never really mentioned in the game. Basically saying like it gives you more context to people's worlds.
Well, I think it expands our understanding of the world. There's something they have to be fighting for. And if we as the viewers don't get to tangibly see and kind of hold on to and grasp, you know, why they're... Look, Joel isn't just doing this for kicks. You know, Tess believed in this. And we saw that she believed in something. Bill and Frank showed us what that something was that Tess could see and that Tess wanted. And that, you got to understand, Bill and Frank, I always almost say Bill and Ted. Bill and Frank become the embodiment of why Joel is doing this at all. You know, and I just, oh God, it's just so beautiful the way they did that.
It also gives you hope that there's other people out there
That are doing the same thing.
that, like the zombie thing isn't the end all be all. Like they live their whole life, really.
Well, 20 years. Yeah. I mean, that's another thing that I think that is a problem with modern, call them zombie stories. I mean, infected.
Right.
Is that every human being's evil. At the end of the day, when the fall of civilization happens, the only people left are going to be the people that are going to prey on the weak. And I think that these were two guys that, while one, yes, was a prepper and prepared, they tried to have their own civilization, and that life was still worth preserving. And I think one of the problems that we had with something like The Walking Dead is it became so downbeat, and just every person, and that was the comic, that was in the comic. But you watch this at the end of the day, there's got to be some glimmer of hope.
Exactly.
There's got to be something that these people are holding on to, and the idea Ellie having a potential cure is so they can actually end up having the society that Bill and Frank had made for themselves, if only in that little tiny part of the world.
I'm so glad that you brought up Walking Dead, because you know how those guys came to try to invade their place? Mm-hmm. I said, if they're going to introduce me to the leader of this this is Walking Dead all over again. I'm not watching this. You know, I'm glad they were just attackers. Meaning it probably
But there is more to come.
No, but it probably happened every now and then. We just saw one instance, right?
Yeah, or had to.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, it's a problem with the genre in that there's only so many resources to go around, and people
Yeah.
are always the weak are trying to take.
When Romero talks about it too ad nauseum of just like zombies are just a metaphor for humanity and how like
Yes.
people inherently, when given the opportunity to be deplorable, tech usually will be. But I'm so glad you brought up like these people surviving, because I don't know if you guys have this moment with your friends of in the zombie apocalypse, who would survive or what would happen.
Oh, yeah.
Artists aren't exactly a hot commodity usually. Where I'm like, man, I hope that our evil overlords will keep me as a pet because I'm nice. I'm a pretty good cook, but my survival skills are busted. And so it was really lovely to see somebody who was a painter and a musician, or well, somebody who appreciated music, thriving. Because you just don't think about somebody having that kind of skill set and doing well.
And he
you
was
see
quite
him
the painter.
Do beautifully, yeah.
Well, Frank was. Yeah, Frank was a great painter.
Frank was quite the artist, and you saw a lot of his work and the portraits he was painting of Bill. And
So
All right, what's next?
Next up, we've got Ryan Lohner. I was never afraid before you showed up. One of the most romantic lines I've ever heard.
streaming.
Which culminating with, I'm old, I'm content, but the line was, you were my purpose. I mean, that line, I was never afraid before you, fabulous line. But the culmination of it all, you were my purpose. So if you're going to go, hey, it's not like I'm in my 20s. I've lived a great life. I've been happy and I'm content. And I don't want to go back to living the way it was before you. So if you're going, a little bit of backdraft in there. If you go, I go. And you were, because you were my purpose. I mean, that was the line for me.
And it was like whatever his life was missing, Frank filled.
Yeah,
all those
absolutely.
empty gaps, whatever he turned his head away from, he brought him back.
It was the visuals of when we first see Bill, he's in that bunker. He's closed off from the world. He's in isolation, all that kind of stuff. It ends with an open window looking out into the world. I know he's dead at this point, but it ends with him dying with somebody with an open window to the world. His world changed when he met Frank.
an open window full of color.
Yeah,
and his
When you
letter
first
was
saw it,
hilarious.
It was black and
his letter was hilarious.
Yeah.
I never liked
Probably
you,
Joel.
but I respect you.
Probably Joel.
I never
But that
liked
was
you, but I
another thing. You
respect
see him in this darkened bunker with this colorless. They weren't color cameras.
It was all
because
drab.
In 2003, you couldn't get like color cameras like that. And then that window is just. They mentioned Norman. Don't they mention Norman Rockwell? I think maybe in the after show somebody was talking about how Norman Rockwell was. Maybe I was listening to something else yesterday, but that was that bucolic, that window, looking out that window. That was the perfect, not just the perfect metaphor that we didn't, but it was also the perfect world.
Yeah.
You know, the world outside was the perfect world that mirrored. The first thing we see at the beginning is other than Joel, we first see Nick Offerman. He's in that bunker, and everything is black and white, and there is no color.
Yeah.
I actually had a question.
And there's no life.
Really quick. From when that Tess died, and then when we see them visit when Frank and Bill are already dead, how much time has? Do we get an idea
I
how much
guess a
time has
couple
passed?
days.
Oh, it's
If
just a
that,
couple days.
If that, because they're still
If
eating
that.
these things.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
All right.
Just double checking.
What's next?
J-Jav Dav is back, calling it now. Ellie will save Joel with that gun.
Oh, the one she stashed. Oh, no doubt. That's how Joel's going to find out she has it. She's
I was
going
going
to
to say,
save him.
if we're following the rules of Chekhov, it will be going off.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. 100%. 100%. All right. What's next?
All right. Walter White Walker writes, do you think it's too late or early to have PS Studios and Naughty Dog reboot Uncharted in a series format?
It is too late. They're planning on doing a sequel.
Yeah.
And listen, while
Bummer.
3 out of the 4 of us in this room didn't love the original, one of us did.
It's not as, it's not as bad as you guys.
Here's the thing. To me, it was like the first Underworld movie. It was, they may not have knocked it out of the park, but there are elements there that you can build on. And I personally think that Tom Holland can be Nathan. I really think he can be. And I think there are elements there. There are crumbs of stuff there. And if they can take that and build on that and make course corrections, I think this could be a good franchise. It's just, but they've got some
Go to
lessons
some
to learn.
place, Uncharted.
They shouldn't
Jump
do it.
to a pizza place.
They shouldn't do it with Tom Holland though. It should be a complete reboot.
No,
if
they
it's
won't.
a series.
No, they're making a. They're doing
because
a.
like
If it was a series, I get you.
yeah, because I did like it, but if they're gonna start a series, I want it to be.
Oh, it'd have to be clean.
Yeah,
slate.
yeah, clean
yeah,
slate.
absolutely. All right, what's next?
All right. We got Southius. He smiled. Mofo actually smiled at the end.
Sorry, who?
Whoever smiled, I don't know. At the end.
Are you talking about Nick?
Oh, was it Joel?
Joel did.
Yeah, because in the
He was
truck ride.
bopping to his music.
Yeah,
yeah.
Ron said. Whatever.
It's
Yeah.
not. What did Ellie say? It's not the word, or it's not unlistenable, or something. It's better than nothing. Is that what she said?
Something like
Yeah,
that.
It's better than nothing.
And he's like, leave that on.
Yeah.
oh yeah, of
So
course. It's
because
like,
the-
leave that alone. Leave that alone.
And
Then he
then-
puts
oh,
in.
wait.
Okay, leave that on.
Yeah, this is
That was good. All right, what's next?
All right. Johnny Wiener says, I'm not the one who gets into gay moments of love couples in general in films, TV, but this was beautiful done. Bill and Frank's our favorite characters.
Okay, look, they're not a gay couple. They're a couple. It's not a gay love story. It's a love story. And like, to sound, at the risk of sounding like a fucking t-shirt, love is love. And when you get one character like Bill, whose whole world is changed, when he meets somebody that not only shows him love, but he feels he can show love too, that changes your world.
Maybe for the very first time.
Absolutely, for the very first.
Needed to actually live and make living worthwhile.
Well, that was the thing. I got that Bill could have lived his whole life and protected himself. But what kind of a life would it have been? The same
Yeah.
life he had, presumably he lived with his mother. You know, don't touch my mother's things. She was the most important thing in his life. He probably barely went outside. You know,
also
and
had a life where he
except
didn't get
to
to
get-
live as himself, clearly.
no, couldn't live. Absolutely not. And what was really interesting was, what did Frank do from the very beginning? Dragged him outside, got him up from that bunker, and dragged him out beyond the fence.
Here's the other thing
to a
about
place
that.
where he wasn't safe.
The thing about that too is that it's not. This is what I find fascinating about Bill. It's not like Bill was. I was completely content being this way, because from the moment he met Frank, and it's like Frank's just like, listen, I could really use something to eat. Bill could have gone in, say, here's an apple, here's a cucumber, be on your way, right? But he went in and created this 3-course meal. He went in and created this absolute thing, because I think even Bill knew, as hardened as he was,
clothes.
he needed other people. He needed somebody else.
He knew how to survive. He didn't fully know how to live.
That's a great way to put it. I
Cook
love
like that, you'll get anybody.
Oh my gosh.
You want.
You know what's up, Chef Pleasure.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
six of Ray's 7 Tinder pictures are just the
just
food he
It's just
creates.
food.
Here's what I've cooked.
Yeah.
Tinderella.
Tinderella.
That's a
Ray
smart
Aura.
profile.
Tinderella. All right, what's next?
All right, we've got Johnny Weiner back. I'm not the one. No, Walter White Walker. Fun fact: Ashley Johnson played the youngest sister in later seasons of Growing Pains and a waitress in the deleted Avengers scene during the New York battle.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, and she was in the one with Lady Sif where she didn't have her memory. The one where she wakes up in a bag.
Where
and
she's got all the tattoos.
yeah,
tattoos.
and I can't remember, what's that? Gap Space or no?
yeah.
Blind spotting?
Blind Spot. That was
yeah.
it. Yeah. So she was also in Blind Spot. She's one of the Critical Role people.
She's in Joss Whedon's Much Ado About Nothing.
That's right. Yeah,
And she
she's
is,
great.
in terms of
wonderful.
Last of Us. I'm sorry.
She was the
Ellie.
voice of Ellie
Oh, okay.
in the
voice of
game.
Mocap.
Thank you.
In the game, but they said she's got a small role,
She does.
but we haven't seen her yet.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm excited to find out what that's going to be. All right, what's next?
All right, Southius is next. Me meeting Bill for the first time. Yeah, he's going to be one of those a-holes. Me at the end. Man, he was nothing but a sweet, good-natured person.
Yeah,
Way to subvert expectations with him.
yeah, and I think even people watch. I mean, that's the beautiful thing about the episode. Even people who've played the game are watching it, and they're discovering him.
Yeah.
like really discovering the character. I love that. That was great.
That's why you should never make fun of the survivalists.
Yep, you're gonna need
Because
him when
they're
the-
gonna
when the shit goes down.
Yeah, they're gonna have everything you want when everything comes apart.
You know what? I don't know if you guys remember this. Chris, you might be a little too young, but 20, 25 years ago, there was a massive blackout that like the entire East Coast of Canada and the US was just out. There was a domino effect happened with thing, and power was out for like a day, 2, 3 days.
Yeah, I saw a documentary on that on I think it was on HBO. I didn't. It didn't affect us here on the West
Yeah,
Coast.
but the entire East Coast. So our thing now, my dad had already bought the Campea Ranch, right? And my dad is not a Bill survivalist, but my dad's a prepared guy, right? So it was so funny because when that went out, my dad was one of the first guys I'd ever even heard of to have like external power generators. So when the power went out, my dad goes out to the barn, rolls this thing out that I never even knew he had, plugs it into the house, and then you could have seen the Campea Ranch from outer space because everything was black except our house was like completely lit up and all this kind of stuff. It would have been calling the zombies if it was a zombie thing.
That documentary, what was scary was as soon as the lights went out, they had a first-hand account from a cop that was like just doing the street stuff. What he said, what he first thought he was going to get attacked by, because it was in New York.
Well, it felt like
in New
civilization was ending when the
So like, just the fact that like, as soon as the power went out, he was like, I was scared for my life because he was there and he was patrolling a very, very bad street in New York or wherever he was, and I was like, oh my god.
Yeah, that would have been scary.
You can't call for backup or anything.
Wow. That's my memory of that is why I set up a little solar system at home. So like even if the lights go out, I got power, man. We're ready to go. All right, what's next?
All right. Ryan Lohner writes, that mention of Tess in the letter hit even harder, coming just hours after the death of Annie Wershing.
Protect Tess. And I like too how Ellie couldn't say it.
I like that part.
She couldn't say it. Yeah. He's just like, okay, give it to me.
She even looked at him for confirmation, like looked at him to see if she should say it.
But also, I think for us as the viewer, they did something without saying something. I think when Joel then goes outside, he realizes that object, that thing he needs now to protect, it isn't Tess anymore. Now it's her. Now it's Ellie.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it's going to resonate with him as the show progresses, is that moment of Bill encouraging him, you and me, we're protectors, and that's what we got to do. And he's going to realize that's now Ellie.
Well, it's funny when Bill didn't want to meet Tess. Yeah. You know, and I'd like to believe that it was that sit-down lunch that they had that might have been Bill realized that, you know, at first he's not having it. He's got the gun. And Joel says, get that gun out of my face. Yeah. You know, but when they were sitting down, he reluctantly agreed to take this meeting with these strangers. That could have been anybody. They could have led a raiding party or whatever. And I thought it was pretty interesting. They didn't show us the moment where they first came. Like how they convinced
No, they just jumped right into the table.
But that said a lot, that they were sitting at the table. And it was great how Offerman played it because, you know, it was tense. The whole thing was tense. But by him writing that letter and saying, take care of Tess, he'd come full circle. Like, you're not going to invite neighbors. We're not going to have friends.
You can see where that meeting led to. He had the code to the gate.
Yeah, they clearly built a very good relationship.
And I was like, just those two things, you could see how far they went.
And when he was shot, his very first thing he says to Frank when he thinks he's dying is, call Joel.
Yeah.
But I couldn't have been the only one to think this. That entire conversation as they're sitting down having dinner, and Bill's got the gun on the table. I don't know if you noticed this, but Joel is eating with one hand. His other hand is under the table.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
And a part of me is thinking, he's got a gun too.
Oh, yeah.
But it was the same kind of moment that Ellie had with Joel earlier when Ellie's like, hey, you're adults. You made a choice. Don't blame this on me. When he's saying, we don't need you, blah, blah, blah. That's going to corrode. That's going to be gone. We got the wiring for that, blah, 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 and get that fucking gun out of my face. And there was a respect that was established there, I feel.
Yeah. And Pedro Pascal's acting is the best because that's the only part I really got hungry at. When he was eating. When he was eating, I got hungry. I don't care whatever he was having. I was like, I'm going to go in the kitchen and get something to eat.
All right. What's next?
Right. We got Daniel Vakura who writes, Frank not wanting to be around Bill anymore, leading him to getting infected and then hanging himself. With Bill crumpling up that note would have been such a dark ending like the game. Both stories work.
Yeah,
it's just a twist on, you could have gone either
again,
direction.
one is the way it happened in the game. Like we do see Frank in the game, only it's, I think, like from the shoulders down hanging. But, I mean, they decided to go in a completely different direction. Again, the key to making a great adaptation is not just blindly sticking to the source material. It's knowing when to elevate it. And this was an elevation, I thought.
And it also, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say what you were talking about before we started rolling, too. With the gameplay, you have agency, right? You experience the game as these characters. So you naturally care for them because you are playing as them, you are making their choices. So you have to make different choices so you have a different experience and a different emotional tether to these characters to give a shit about anything that's happening. If it's happening to you, you feel very differently.
And also, the tone of The Last of Us is not the game. It's grimdark for a reason. That's part of the gameplay in it. This, when you're watching narrative, I mean, this changes the tone greatly.
Oh,
Suddenly
exactly.
a sweet
Yeah.
romantic love story. This
Exactly.
wouldn't have worked. You would never have seen this in the game.
I mean, we're always talking about in Marvel that Marvel is at its best and a little bit of the weakness when they know how to change gears. You got to change gears. And the fact that this thing is taking us from a horrific moment like the death of Tess to this incredible, tender, beautiful part of the story. Like, the show is changing gears as we're going.
And it's too easy to have like a zombie show and then just end every episode like on a grim moment.
Right.
And you, as me, as a viewer, like I lose hope and I stop. I don't like that feeling every episode, and I'll quit the show if you keep giving that to me. Like this was a nice pace.
That's what I did
Yep.
with Walking Dead. It became torture.
Yeah. It's like another
like-
group, another death. And
When they
it's
took
like,
out Glenn, I was like, I'm done. I can't watch this. This is grotesque. And why? What am I rooting for?
right.
All right, what's next?
Yeah, and I mean, even just to that point, if you play The Last of Us 2, it does get into the relationships. They did learn
Yeah.
lessons from the first one on both sides. You see it from relationships all around, everyone involved.
Yeah.
So yeah. All right. So we got next up, Terje Tiberius Mork. Some say this episode is just filler, so awfully wrong. It's by seeing life through others' eyes you learn the biggest lessons. Joel is not the same coming out of this, and same with the audience.
You know,
Well said.
I heard somebody say earlier, I think it was one of the viewers wrote in, it's like, you know, this episode could have been like 10 or 15 to 20 minutes.
Oh, yeah, we got a super chat about
Yeah,
it.
Did- Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, so I think I saw that scroll by before we had to end the show today. And it's like, okay, if all you need is those YouTube videos that give you a full movie summary in 9 minutes, sure, I can sit down and tell you what happened. Hey, so Bill meets this guy, Frank. He shows them there's a good reason to live. They fall in love, and ultimately because he gets sick and they die together. Yeah, you could have done that. But the thing about the movies and storytelling on screen, like on TV and stuff like that, is about immersing us in that so we can feel it. And I'm sorry, that episode could not be 20 minutes and have us feel it. Ray pointed out earlier, their creative choices about how far in time to jump every time, 4 years, 3 years, 10 years, and watching and experiencing their relationship develop. You just say, oh, they develop a really tight bond. Oh, okay, but we don't feel that. You have to experience it to feel it. And that's the difference between a neat story idea and brilliant storytelling, by the end.
And I'm telling you, this is the first time I'm ever excited for the next episode. So what they did here was great. Like maybe you might see like not much happened in terms of Joel and Ellie, like their story. But to me, a ton of things happened. And I can't even explain what it is. It's just a feeling that this is the journey right here. Like it's about to start. Like I can't wait.
And
for
the way
next
that it
episode.
was bracketed, it opened at the river, when Joel was at the river and then walking up and finding Ellie sitting down against the tree. And then when you got into the story of Bill and Frank, it told that whole story. We dropped in Joel and Tess. And then at the end, you bring back Joel and Ellie. And they walk and the gate's locked and they find the dead flowers and the whole. It was really brilliant how they did that.
Yeah, and I needed to see Joel and Tess at like that part because it filled in the gaps because I didn't get enough. Like I didn't feel their closeness until this episode.
So, I'm glad you brought the thing about the flowers too, because the whole time I'm wondering, are they going to get there in time to get a last words from thing? By Jim showing up and then having the camera do a pull focus on the dying flowers, that without any dialogue, without anything else, that told us as the audience a little bit of time has passed.
Yeah, and no one's taking care of this
They
stuff.
died. It wasn't terribly long ago because the meat on the table had not completely decomposed.
No.
But I
They still
mean,
look good.
it happened. Maybe they might have even just missed it by a few weeks. I think they may have just missed it by a few weeks.
Yeah.
All right,
It
what's
ain't
next?
green, it's clean.
Walter White Walker writes, boringly straight dude here. Episode was amazing.
Yeah. I mean, again, if you're able to get over your own the stupid bullshit some people have, and just see this as a human story about two people who bring incredible meaning to each other's lives, then you see it as what it was. It's an incredible, beautiful thing. All right.
Wait, as the resident gay in the room, I just want to...
Did anybody say you could talk? No, I'm just sorry.
Surprise, I'm in here.
I'm surprised.
Here and queer.
Taylor, come out.
I just wanted to say, growing up, I didn't have any representation for me in the movies I watched, the shows I watched, the games I played. So last night, I did not make it this far in the game. So I did not know what to expect.
Taylor, you didn't make it very far in the game, period.
I didn't make it very far in the
From
game,
what we
period.
discovered.
But last night was just so beautiful. And what I was thinking was not only like how lucky am I to be able to experience this story and to see this, but like now people who were my age growing up that didn't have representation, like this is just such a beautiful love story. And growing up, the closest thing I could think of, I don't know what year it came out, was Brokeback Mountain. And it's like, okay, I liked it because I was like, oh, I feel, like there's a movie that portrays me.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just so tragic. And this one, yes, it was tragic. They died. But it's just like the way they went out on their own terms. It was with love. It was just such a beautiful, emotional. I was holding my boyfriend crying the whole episode. It was just so beautiful. So for me, it just is.
So are you saying you're a cowboy?
I'm saying I'm a cowboy.
He's always been a
Yes.
cowboy.
Always
Got
been
it.
a cowboy. Assless chaps all the way. But I'm just I'm just so proud of last night's episode. Just my favorite show that's on air right now that I felt represented and just how emotional it was for me.
Well, I also think to speak to that, science fiction, fantasy, and horror as genres, sometimes, at least when I was growing up, always were poo-pooed. You'd have to have, well, Star Trek has allegorical stories, but all the thing is, you can deal with these kinds of stories. You put things that are socially hot button issues, but you move them into a fantasy context or a horror context, and people that might object to something suddenly can see it in a different light because they're interested in a horror thing or a science fiction show or fantasy.
Horror, sci-fi, and fantasy has always been way more inclusive.
Way more inclusive. And that's the power of doing something like this. Suddenly you've normalized, you just see two people and you're not too caught up in the...
Yeah.
Side note, and I think I might make an editorial about this. There are a bunch of jackboots who, like, there's this common thing out there that, like the morons who say, they're race swapping and blah, they're more worried about being woke than they are about telling good stories. No, number one, you're a moron. Number two, Last of Us again proves, listen, do they have shows with representation? Do they have shows and movies that have representation that are bad shows and movies?
Absolutely.
Yes. The problem is the mentally stunted look at that and go, well, it was bad because there was a black guy in it. It's bad because there was a gay guy. No. They're bad because they were bad. Just like we can all point to 1,000 different shows that are led by straight white male guys that are bad. They're not bad because they're straight white male guys. They're bad because it was a badly made story or badly made movie. With The Last of Us, with them making the decision about, first of all, Joel's background, his family heritage, different than it is in the game. His daughter in the game is white, his daughter in the game is black, like all that kind of stuff. It's irrelevant. A good story is a good story. And if The Last of Us was a bad show, it wouldn't, there are a bunch of the jackboots who'd be running around going, well, it's because they changed the ethnicity of Joel. No, you fucking moron. It's because they didn't make it well. And if the show is great, it's not because they changed the ethnicity. We learned from this is that it doesn't fucking matter. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what your family heritage is. It doesn't matter what the pigmentation tone of your skin color is. None of that fucking matters. It's just another battle cry of the weak, insecure, little pathetic people who call themselves men these days. But anyway.
They're missing out.
Yeah,
You know
they're
what?
just
If you
missing out.
choose to not watch something because of those reasons, then there's other people enjoying it.
To borrow from Patton Oswalt, you're going to miss everything cool and amazing in this world.
Yeah.
Open yourself up a little bit.
All right. What's next?
Bigster 5001 writes, a truly beautiful episode of any TV show. The music during Bill and Frank's final day montage has now worked me twice. It's by Max Richter and was played over the sad bits of the film Arrival.
Yeah, it's used a lot. That was the one thing. I love that piece of music. But it has almost become... It's like when they played the Adagio that was in Platoon.
Yeah.
Then it was everywhere.
See, that's one of Anne's favorite pieces of music. Because as soon as they started playing that music in the show, Anne was like lighting up because she loves that piece.
It's an incredible piece of music, but they've used it over the last 15 years. They've used it in so many things. Sure. I thought, however, it was incredibly appropriate to use when they used it.
It was well matched there.
Yeah.
All right, what's next?
Their last day was like the longest day, right? Like the way they did it.
Yeah.
Like you felt more.
But
Yeah,
he says he chose make my last day a good day.
Yeah, I felt more sad as the day went on, but then you could tell it was like something that they really wanted, like, or at least Frank did. So, yeah.
All right.
All right. Two-parter here from Alex Von Gollum, who writes, this episode displays the notion of characters are to serve the story. Bill and Frank's ending, together with Bill's letter, are acting as a catalyst for Joel to care and love Ellie.
100%.
100%.
Yet, at the same time, Bill and Frank got greatly developed. Beautiful episode.
And an understanding, I believe as the show goes on, our understanding of Bill and Frank will increase our understanding of Joel and Ellie. I think that was perfectly put. That was absolutely perfectly put.
Well, and I think Joel's smile at the end, they had to put a bookend on the test situation. The test situation's done.
Yeah.
You know, and it took that when Joel walked out of the house with that letter and was standing outside, the look on Pedro Pascal's face, that was the moment where, okay, I'm over it. You know, this is the catharsis I needed. There was no other way for me to get this, and he received it. And I thought it was great. And when they were in the car together, it's like we're moving on to our new phase of life, you know, and I've accepted this situation. You're coming to Wisconsin for me, or Wyoming with me, and Wyoming, and we're going to find somebody to take care
I'm going to
of
find a Jedi to hand you off to.
And Joel lost his daughter, and then the girl he was...
Tess.
Yeah.
Yep. Lost a lot.
You would think he would just give up, right? But is it his brother, the thought of his brother, what's keeping him going right now as we speak? Do you get that?
Well, yeah,
feel like a little.
because Bill and Joel have a lot in common. Not as extreme though. Like I think you're absolutely right. Like Joel was a little bit living in his own bunker with as Bill was, not to that extreme and not to that extent. He still did have tests, he had all kinds of stuff, but he's obviously very a lot more of a jaded guy than he was before his daughter died. But now he's coming out of that. Just like Frank brought Bill out of it, Ellie's going to bring him out of it.
By the way, I also liked how we heard a little bit more of what happened on Outbreak Day.
Yes.
Yes.
And they filled in, which was just
yeah,
the next
right.
day. Everything was
Contaminated flour and sugar.
Verifying a lot of
When they're
fan
walking-
theories. Yep, a lot of fan theories there.
and that's another thing. The show has embraced those fan theories. The fact that Druckmann and Mason know the fan theories and are incorporating those fan theories in a great way.
Felt so justified baking my cake.
You don't have a lot of
Making my
that.
cake.
To have creators who understand their fan base and are using what the fans have come up with, that's pretty cool.
All right, what's next?
All right. CJ Rebirth writes, seatbelt, Ellie and all. Joe puts it on her.
It was such a sweet dad moment.
I know.
He still has the dad memories and muscles. I love it.
He's trying to block that out too. He doesn't want to be that anymore.
Which, this build-up though, Ray, because there is a very famous, iconic scene in the game that is absolutely going to be. I'm jealous to join. It's going to be in here. There is a monologue that is going to break your freaking heart.
I could tell. I know where the show is going with them
Yeah.
too. Like I'm already like, come on.
So good.
Do I just continue watching this piece of crap?
No, you do.
Watch it so you and your
Watch
friend
the
Chris can
first
talk
season.
about
You'll be
it.
fine.
All right, what's next?
Daniel Vaquera is back. Well, it must have. Oh, this is part two too. Hang on. Okay, here we go. Daniel Vaquera, part one. Druckmann said they only decide to change the fate of the character if it can be improved. They said this was always going to be a happy ending since every episode can't have things be miserable for
Is that what Ray was
characters.
just saying?
Yeah. Then the audience would not think there's really a shot for our main cast with it being too grim. I miss Bill's interactions with Ellie and Joel, but it works so well. Really impactful.
I was looking forward, as the show was progressing and we could tell we were moving through time back up to the present time, I was kind of looking forward to seeing Bill and Ellie interact. By the way, did you notice that it's at Bill's that Ellie gets her iconic shirt? That she ends the episode wearing that iconic shirt?
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty cool.
So there was like a little Easter egg then.
Oh, they were like, I was going on my YouTube feed this morning, I saw there was like one video saying the 79 Easter eggs in episode 3. The very next video in the feed said the 81 Easter eggs. Like they're all trying to one up
The other
each other.
guy didn't see.
The other guy did this too. The other guy missed.
I gotta say one thing about Bella Ramsey. A lot of, I guess, the people who played the game didn't like that she was cast as.
Oh, initially, yeah, there's a lot of backlash.
But there's something about her face that makes her look like a baby still, right? And that's like totally working. Like she's still young. If they picked the girl that I've seen on the covers of the game, I don't think it would work as well without the way this girl looks, I mean, I still think she's like a small
I
kid.
feel like she just looks like a brunette, brown-eyed Ashley Johnson. I really think she looks like she could be just like her baby in a flashback. Like, I think it was great casting.
That's why when she cusses, it's still, I'm like, whoa,
yeah, because she was 19 in real life, but like so many things, right? We cast older and they play younger.
She's 19?
Yep, she's 19.
But she still looks like
we
a
did like
baby.
the antithesis of CW casting, right? We were like, well, everyone's 30. Awesome. She looks like an actual child. Like she looks like she's 14.
But we talked about this show
because
because somebody wrote in a while ago and asked about like, oh, they're gonna have to recast her for when they get into the Abby storyline. They're gonna have to recast Ellie because it's gonna be older. It's like no. Look at what they're doing with Joel. Right now they are. I mean, that's just how she looks, but they're also making her look a little bit younger too.
Yeah.
When it comes time for us to fast forward a couple of years, she's going to be able to look like.
Yeah, I mean, look at Jenna Ortega in Wednesday versus X. You know?
Oh yeah.
They ain't recasting shit, man. They
Yeah,
better
no.
keep this girl on.
Yeah,
they're
she's
not gonna
fantastic.
They are.
Come on.
She's wonderful.
All right, what's next?
All right. The J Thunder 45 writes, truly believe this was the most beautiful piece of fiction ever written. Love that their life together ultimately encouraged Joel's final decision.
Yeah, I'm going to stop short of saying it's one of the most beautiful stories ever written, but I stand by what I said last night. I think this is a top 5 episodes of television in the last 5 to 10 years. I'm floored by it.
And with the time constraints too, you got so much out of so little.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, what's next?
All right, 1 second, just lost my spot. Okay, Sam Fisher writes, what I love about the episode most is that you take Joel and Ellie out of it. It just becomes a standalone special about finding love in an apocalypse.
If you take Joel and Ellie out of it and you package it a certain way, it could have been its own Warner Brothers released movie.
Yeah.
And just call it, love and zombie
Time of cholera. I mean, cordyceps.
Yeah, in cordyceps.
cordyceps.
The time of cordyceps. You could just call that, made its own standalone movie, and it still would have worked, but within the context of The Last of Us, it brings on a whole new dimension of meaning and importance. And
Like a little DLC.
yeah, really good DLC. All right, what's next?
All right, Wicked Man writes, man, Joel is intimidating when he tells Bill to get that gun out of him.
Yes.
Whoa.
Let's not forget that in episode 1, Tess is being roughed out by that gang. And the guy's biggest worry is, you're going to tell Joel. And everybody's afraid of Joel.
We see him beat a man to death.
Yeah, I mean, but they laid those seeds
Yeah.
in episode 1. Like, listen, this isn't some new thing. He's not like secretly a tough guy. Everybody knows, and even the gang leader's like, yeah, this is, Joel? Yeah, don't tell Joel. Don't tell Joel.
It was the encounter with the clickers that kind of reset that for me.
Right.
Just because it seemed like he wasn't as confident. Just seeing that, it kind of made me feel not confident in him. But then it brought it back.
By the way, how many more questions do we have to go?
Like 7.
All right, you guys continue. I got to run to the bathroom. I'm not going to make it through 7. I'll be right back.
Actually, this just dropped, though. Actress Cindy Williams, the optimistic Shirley of Laverne and Shirley, dies at 75. She was also in American Graffiti.
Yeah. Oh, that's
She
sad.
just passed away.
Oh.
Man, this is becoming one of the worst years. There's been so many,
Yeah, there's
since
been
the
a few that
beginning.
go.
Well, Leanne's passing too. Yeah.
All right, well, Raymond.
I knew you had to go, that's why.
Raymond.
I don't know why I checked mine. Like, do you want to use the women's?
Is that what you do, Chris? Huh?
All right. From
Bring a lot of big dick energy, so I might as well use the men's.
DA Collector 89 writes, when Frank planned out how he wanted to die in bed after having a good meal and drinking the rest of the medicine in the wine, man, that was emotional.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really emotional. I just couldn't stop thinking about how it would make the wine taste bad.
I was
True. It was just like, what a waste of wine.
I was waiting for a twist.
Maybe it's like iocane powder. You can't. There's no scent,
Ooh,
taste.
you have to train very, very much.
I was waiting for that twist, but no, they just went through with it and ended it beautifully.
Yeah.
All right. James Wheeler writes, the location where Joel kept his stash, Cumberland Farms, was a store I grew up going to in Massachusetts.
Yep.
Ooh.
When I was in Chatham this summer for my family reunion, that's where we would go get stuff every day.
They got a great shout out, and so did Home Depot.
Yeah.
The Home Depot.
good product placement.
All right. Eric Hoff writes, I swear this show creates a love-hate relationship. You want to get attached to characters emotionally, but then worry if you might die. Well, yeah, that's life in the end times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Daniel Vacura writes, critics saying episode 3 was the best episode of the show, where it's an all-time great episode, weren't wrong. It was a tour de force when it comes to acting and writing. All right. And then do you want to refresh that? Looks like we might. Refreshing it so far has worked. Okay, it looks like we're back.
Okay.
All right. Abraham Rees writes, I was wondering if I'd cry during the episode since I knew we were getting Frank here. Boy, I was not prepared to ugly cry last night. This was basically an extended dystopian version of the Up intro. Fantastic episode.
Yeah. Oh, we talked about this when we were doing the companion video.
Yes.
It does, especially when you talk about condensing this kind of story, right? You could do the Up thing. You could go that route and just visually show us something. That wouldn't have had the same payoff here. It wouldn't have worked. But it's so beautifully done. I don't know about you guys, but since I was watching it with Logan, like we didn't say anything to each other. There was just a moment where we grabbed each other's hands and we're just silently sobbing, just tears streaming down our face until the very end of the episode where we were just like, I really love you and you're my purpose. Oh shit.
I was playing Xbox and I was like, what? Pass me the ball.
And
I'm
Anne thought it was like the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen.
Oh.
Like I remember when it was done, and it was just like that was like one of the most emotionally beautiful things I've ever seen.
It was stunning.
It was great.
So well done. All right, what's next?
Juan Brana is next. Rob, as an AV enthusiast, can we talk about how great the 4K HDR and Dolby Atmos mix is? Can't wait for this 4K Steelbook with lossless audio.
Wait, for which movie?
For this.
For this show.
Hopefully. I mean, HBO does put stuff out. Their House of the Dragon discs are amazing. So maybe they'll do it. I mean, I'm sure we'll get it soon.
Nice.
In a steelbook.
It's still so weird that they do, because if the whole purpose that you're making these shows is to get people to subscribe to HBO Max, it's counterproductive to put it out in physical media. I know, but if you give other people other options to watch it, and the whole purpose is to encourage people and entice people to get HBO Max, you're saying, you don't have to get HBO Max.
But it's just that guy and Rob buying it.
That's true.
No, The House of the Dragon's still on top 5 bestsellers. The thing about it is,
What's the criteria to be a bestseller in physical media these days?
they're still
16.
making billions of dollars.
Okay.
Physical media is still making billions of
And guess who has entertainment?
All right.
Bill. Because he's down there. There's no internet. What are you going to stream on?
He's got
Nothing.
a load of DVDs down
Yeah,
there.
so.
VHS tape.
Just in case this happens.
And look, I'll tell you something. The House of the Dragon and Game of Thrones, like the long night when the White Walkers attacked Winterfell, it looks way better on
Right.
this.
It's because it was so compressed. That's why there were so many
and it
complaints.
has to be compressed going
Yeah.
over a pipe.
Yeah.
And then everyone thought the director was being smug, and we said, it's just your settings because I shot it perfectly. Well, it's like he probably did.
He
You were
did.
compressed.
It's
Why
a little
do you
surprising.
look like Pedro Pascal when you're saying that? Way better. It's all scrunchy and I.
I just also want to shout out that Abraham Ruiz, that was a $20 super chat.
Oh,
Yeah,
thank
yeah.
you, Abraham.
So now we're on to J Jav Dav, who writes another adaptation that elevates the story.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and listen, it's hard to come by like adaptations that have elevated, particularly video game adaptations that have elevated the story. I mean, you look at something like Sonic, which is like they just basically got to start from scratch, and they definitely elevate. But it's not. Sonic isn't an adaptation of the story.
They talked about the Chaos Gems.
Sure, a little bit, but
Tiny bit.
it's kind of like Arcane and Sonic, which are like not adaptations of the story. They took the characters and now let's make a story from scratch. This is the best video game adaptation, like where the story, they've taken the story and translated that story into an on-screen story, and it's never been done better.
I mean, imagine if they told the story of Bill and Frank the way it was told in the game. You wouldn't have this at all.
No, not at all.
And that's the thing. You can't. I mean, translating things verbatim is very difficult to do because it's a game.
Yeah.
The context of the storytelling is very different than this. They created a story that's still based in the game, but wasn't in the game. So in a way, they work in tandem with one another.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, what's next?
All right, just some support from Matthew Frazier, and that's it.
All right. Well, guys, that will do it for this week's installment of our The Last of Us after show open spoiler discussion. I love this show so much, and I'm like Ray. I'm drooling for next week's episode. Cannot wait. Thank you guys for joining us. Big special thank you to you guys who sent in super chats. Number one, because you gave us great, fun, insightful things to talk about. But number two, you supported our channel as you did it. And all of us here in the room, thank you so much for that support. I love doing this format. We're all literally sitting around here.
It's nice to be able to actually talk to each other like people.
This is kind of fun. So thank you for that, guys. So for everybody in the room, thank you guys for being here. Don't forget to join us. Hey, guys, listen, for those of you still watching, James Gunn's announcement. They're revealing it to the major trades right now in a closed door little press conference at the Warner Brothers studio lot as we speak. They are going to get to write up their stories tonight and release them in the morning. So in the morning, we are going to be talking the announcements of the brand new DC Universe coming.
Of course, he dropped
Also, this was important. If there's something that you didn't like in this episode and you thought it should win another way, you should write it. Put it in script form. Send it to Rob.
Yes,
I want every single detail of what it should have been instead of what we saw.
Just please run it through Chat GPT first.
Oh, also, just in terms of The Last of Us, guys, tomorrow we'll pick up our Last of Us lunch break Let's Play before the open mic. So tune in after the main show tomorrow.
Why y'all doing cool stuff tomorrow? Dude.
Well,
we ran it
We get pizza on Tuesdays too?
Yeah, Pizza Tuesdays is
That's
amazing.
smart. With my lactose issues, you shouldn't get pizza while I'm here.
All right, guys. Thanks for being here. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a good one. Until next time. Bye-bye.